Is on Georgia tonight as President Trump is trying to hold on to a narrow lead in that state. On election night, President Trump's lead in votes was more than 350,000. Tonight, it is now less than 10,000. Georgia also has 2 Senate seats on the ballot. Senator David Perdue needs more than 50% of the vote to avoid a runoff against Jon Ossoff. He is now less than 50%. And Raphael Warnock is headed for runoff against Senator Kelly Loeffler. Reverend Raphael is kind enough to join us tonight. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Great to be here with you.
All right. So first off, Joe Biden is far outperforming Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama in Georgia. Why do you think that voters have come out for Biden in such large numbers?
Well, the narrowing of the margin and what you're seeing in Georgia with Joe Biden is a connection with all the names that you mentioned, with Hillary Clinton and with Stacey Abrams. We have been witnessing this over time, and it's not the result of magic or happenstance. This is the hard work we've been doing on the ground for years. Stacey Abrams started the New Georgia Project, and I was there with her in the early days as spokesperson and then later chair of the board. We've registered some 400,000 new voters in this state. Stacey ran for governor in 2018. She came within 55,000 votes of winning, and that while running against a man who was both her opponent on the field and the umpire, calling balls and strikes. With his thumb clearly on the scale, he barely squeaked by, less than 55,000 votes. We've registered 800,000 new voters in this state since then, and Georgia is the battleground state, as you're seeing.
And in your race, you had more than 19 opponents. Last time we talked, you kind of compared yourself to David and Goliath. So fast forward to January, when you'll face off against Kelly Loeffler one-on-one. What do you see as the single biggest challenge that with trying to repeat this unprecedented Democratic turnout again 2 months from now?
Well, I'm delighted to see the momentum that we're seeing in my race. I'm a first-time candidate. I had to get in. Unlike her, I don't have an enormous amount of wealth to tap into. She's the wealthiest member of Congress. But we have been able to get our message out across the state, and people are responding. And I think that people understand how much is at stake. It's not just 2 names on the ballot. This is not about Kelly Loeffler, and it's not about Raphael Warnock. It's about health care. And whether you think health care is a human right, as I do you think you ought to get rid of health care in the middle of a pandemic? She thinks that's a good idea. I think that's a terrible idea. It's about the dignity of work, all of these issues and how we get this virus under control. And so what you have is a fundamental difference about the purpose of government and what it means to represent the people in the United States Senate. And I think as we lay out that case, we will prevail.
Now, if Joe Biden does go on to win Georgia, it would seem that he would have the black community in and around Atlanta to thank. Do you think that Biden, Senator Kamala Harris, and the Democratic Party have done enough to appeal to black voters in the South? I mean, it may ultimately be a success in your state for other black candidates for Senate, lost their races in southern states. What do you make of that?
I think that we are building right now the kind of multiracial coalition that we need not only to win this seat, but also to govern effectively. We are seeing a renewed reckoning around race in this country in the wake of these tragic flashpoints we saw this summer. And I think that has to be part of what is taken into account as we deal with a whole range of issues: healthcare, jobs, access to capital, the ability to start small businesses, all of these ways in which people of color and women have to struggle just to get an opportunity. And I think that will be front and center as we move forward in the days ahead.
Yeah, but I'm curious here, because I made a point of this on election night, that in our country's 244-year history, we've only had 10 black senators, 2 of them which were during Reconstructions. We're talking about more than 150 years ago. You had 7 black senators on the ballot the other night, and of course Cory Booker did get a seat, but he was already one of the 10 black senators. Why do you think that it's been so difficult for black people, men and women alike, to really move the needle in that category?
Well, it's a part of our country's ongoing struggle with the sin of racism. And this is work that we are still engaged in. I do think that representation matters. I think that it reflects in public policy and the kinds of arguments that you make. You know, even in this campaign, it's been interesting to me to watch Kelly Loeffler, of all things, going on in the country, to decide to attack the black women who work on her own basketball team as they've been trying to talk about the problem of police brutality. Just deal with the fact that, you know, there are those of us who come from communities where we literally have to have a conversation with our children about what to do when you're pulled over by the police to make sure that you survive that encounter. Now, that isn't a way of impugning the integrity of all police officers. It's just a kind of truth-telling based on experience. She's decided to cheapen and politicize a very serious issue that is, for many in my community, a matter of life and death. I think you take that and you look at it over a range of policies, and you see the ways in which it does matter that when people are sitting around the table, that you have a diversity of experiences. And that's how you come up with public policy that I think helps us to build a more perfect union that is inclusive of all of the American people.
And what do you see as far as these next 2 months shake out, basically, especially if it's not just your race, but also John Ossoff in a runoff as well? You came out with a joke ad today saying to get ready for negative attacks from Kelly Loeffler. If she does blanket the airways with negative ads, how do you plan to respond?
I plan to take the high road. I plan to center the concerns of ordinary people and not to be distracted by issues that people are not thinking about when they're sitting around their kitchen tables.
And lastly, Joe Biden now has the most votes of any presidential candidate in history, bar none. And when all is said and done, Donald Trump will likely have the second most. It appears that America may be more divided than ever. What will you do to help heal our country and your state if you do get, and your state of Georgia, if you do get the Senate seat? You're, of course, a preacher at Martin Luther King's spiritual home. So take us to church. I mean, what kind of lessons would you bring from the pulpit to Washington?
Well, you know, we've had tough times before. The country is divided, but we did fight a civil war, and so there have been challenging times before we pushed through the civil rights movement. I think that there's a way in which our democracy expands and then it contracts. And we've just been going through a tough kind of backlash. And what I would say to all of our citizens is that at the end of the day, we are all we've got. Across racial lines, across partisan lines, we need one another. And some of us who've traveled around the world, we know what it's like to be in a country where a few people have all they could imagine and then some, and then the masses are suffering, struggling. And the question is, do we want to become a more hateful, fearful, and divided nation, or do we want to build what Dr. King called the beloved community? I think that is a moral mandate that sits before us, but also I think it's enlightened self-interest to recognize that I need my neighbor to have health care. I need their children to have access to a good quality education, and I need workers to be able to earn a livable wage and retire in dignity. And so with all of the issues confronting us, we've got to turn toward one another rather than on one another, pray for one another rather than pray on each other. And in a real sense, all of us will be better off.
I vote for the beloved community. And Raphael Warnock, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.